Do you think there's even a slither of unethicalness in jamming?
The chap who did or didn't angle him had done this to somebody else.
We could also, if you wanted to, touch on the ethics, if you like, of angle shooting, right? Because
all right, guys, so we're doing something a little bit different here today. We're going to look at a angle shoot, or a potential angle shoot, let's call it. We're not sure if it's an angle shoot or not. This happened at the EPT. We're going to play parts of this video for you guys, see what you guys think. We're actually very curious, whoever's watching this video. Do you think it's an angle shoot or not? Post it down in the comments below. And what we're going to do is I'm going to host this show. This is going to be a bit of a show we're doing. We're doing a slightly different format. And I'm going to flip this coin here. This is a Canadian quarter. So there's a heads and there's a moose. Okay, so one of either Scott or Tom, they're going to choose heads or moose. They're going to debate either, is this an angle shoot or is this not an angle shoot? So they're going to choose a side. They're going to debate it. They're going to have to choose that side no matter what. And then towards the end of the video, we'll actually give you our real thoughts. Okay, if we actually think it's an angle shoot, if we don't think it's an angle shoot, I'll kind of be egging them on. If they say something I don't agree with or I want them to clarify further on, I'll just ask them. But for now, let's just get straight into this video and let's watch it together and then let's talk about it.
Shevlyakov in the small blind. Ace King.
Yana.
360. 360.
Ooh.
You can't make it
That
360.
is no, not a misclick. Did not see that Wakil opened under the gun. Okay, so this is actually going to be very complicated for Wakil. I know this feels like a great opportunity to just peel and see a flop, but guys, he just thinks Shevlyakov was 3xing from the small blind. I mean, that's going to be, could be ace 6 off, king 10 off, a lot of different hands that is just going to fold to a shove. I think Jamil Wakil is going to go all in here.
Oh my God,
Was
well
not an
predicted.
option. I really missed the action.
And Shevlyakov calls. So Jamil Wakil at risk and behind.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think that was an angle, but it would be a pretty strong one because
It worked.
yeah.
It would have worked, I
Yes.
should say. Oh, look at that look. He doesn't believe him. I don't think he believes it was a misclick.
Yeah.
It's a king. It's top for Shevlyakov. It's the elimination of Jamil Wakil.
If he didn't tell me you just did it to someone else, I mean.
This was the first time he verbally announced his raise before he put the chips in.
That's enough for me.
There was the insinuation from Boris Angelov, by the way, that he did something similar to a player when there are about 20 left.
Yeah.
Shevlyakov claimed that he did not see Jamil Wakil raise under the gun. He thought the action had been folded to him in the small blind. So he said, verbally, 360,000 and then put his chips out. That was an illegal raise. The minimum re-raise was 420, and that's what the floor ruled. And what Wakil thought is, oh, he didn't see that I'd raised. He's 3xing small to big. He could have a weakish hand here, as I think you said, Griffin. Could be something like a6 or just king high. So Wakil tried to take advantage of that by moving all in and, of course, get snap called because Shevlyakov actually had ace king. The insinuation being is he misclicked, in inverted commas, to induce that shove from Wakil.
Let's just start with Scott. Why do you think this is an angle shoot, Scott? Like what makes you think this is an angle shoot?
Corroborating evidence, Jack. Yeah? Plenty
Can
of
you
it.
explain
So,
that word for the people that don't understand it, like myself? What does that mean?
corroborating it means evidence that suggests the truth, if you will. Evidence that goes along with what we've seen. Okay? And said corroborating evidence that wasn't seen, firstly, is what was said afterwards. So the guy who he busts is reliably informed that the chap who did or didn't angle him had done this to somebody else, right? So, once you can chalk up to a mistake, but twice starts to feel like a little bit of a pattern, doesn't it? I know that if I was playing in a high stakes poker tournament and I accidentally min 3-bet, I think I would be a lot more vigilant about it pre-flop moving.
What do you mean? Like, if you accidentally threw it, what do you mean by that?
Well, obviously the case that he didn't angle shoot is that he accidentally clicked as a 3-bet, right? That he didn't see the action, he wasn't paying attention, and so he went to open the small blind thinking that it was an unopened pot, right? And another guy at the table had clearly observed at some point that he had done this before, and he tells the player that the victim in this situation tells him that this is not his first offense. So there's the first part of corroborating evidence.
Let me say something though. Being the host here, do you think that guy right? The guy that came up to him and told him like afterwards, like, hey, he had done this to somebody else, 20 left. Should he have said something when the ruling was being made before that guy, before the Queen Jack player went all in? Should he have been like, hey, this guy's actually done something like this before, like to the guys, to the floor people and stuff like that? Do you think that? No.
No.
Okay, so you think he should have said nothing there?
No, I think he has to stay still. He's got to keep quiet because you can't interfere with the hand, right? Firstly, there's no offense taking place technically. Like you're allowed to make a mistake, right? And you can't really prove the intent of angle shooting there with a min 3-bet. So I don't think the guy should intervene. And if he intervenes, it sounds like some sort of old philosophical debate. If he intervenes and he changes the course of action and the other guy doesn't shove, he's effectively influencing the other fella's decision, which could harm him or could harm our perpetrator here. So I think he's right to stay quiet and just let it play out as is, right? Now he says he's done this before. He believes that he angle shot someone before and he believes he angle shot someone right now, but he doesn't have perfect evidence and he can't say irrefutably that he has angle shot two people. He can only suggest it to the player. So if he stops the hand in the middle and says, I think he angle shot someone and he's angle shooting you, I do believe he is unduly inserting himself into the action. So no, but no smoke sans fire, I would say. So there's your first part of evidence to suggest that it was an angle shoot. Would you like me to continue?
No. I have a lot more questions for you, Scott. But let's touch on Tom for a second. So, Tom,
Yeah.
you clearly believe that this wasn't an
Yeah.
angle shoot. So, why would you say like this?
Well,
wasn't?
once again, I think that Wubbs is being blinded by his rampant xenophobia here, and I think
Wait. What
there's
does that mean? Let's touch on that. What is this rampant xenophobia? Like, what is that?
this is a joke. You know what Wubbs is like, though. I don't officially hold the position of not thinking it's an angle shoot. I will say that I think there are a couple of factors we can look into. I know there was lots of talk in terms of maybe he did it before, right? And maybe his declaration of his bet sizing, which he's never done up to now on a table, that if you just hear those two in isolation, you think, well, that's definitely proof of guilt. I will say there's maybe a couple of things to think about, which is first, like raising small blind versus big blind is very unique compared to raising in position. And so you typically are raising a different sizing, which you are throughout. And so I don't know exactly what happened for the rest of the final table, but I could imagine a situation where you raise under the gun, you raise hijack, you raise middle position, you raise button, etc., and like you just 2x the big blind, and suddenly he's blind v blind, and he's like, okay, I want to 3x the blind, like, and I want to make sure I say the right number because it's a different size than I'm using. So that is very, I would say there's some at least uncertainty in that aspect. I believe the guy who, because there was a post he did after where he wrote a big long post, and the guy that suggested he did it before, it was in relation to a different matter, and so it wasn't actually anything to do with the exact same thing, right? And so if you come and say, oh, I did the exact same thing, like min 3-bet or whatever, that's something different as well. We could also, if you wanted to, touch on the ethics, if you like, of angle shooting, right? Because let's say, for example, like what he did was, if you think about it, is he acted really weak with a strong hand and tricked his opponent. And now if he did that with his body language or something, we'd all go, yeah, it's just part of the game kind of thing. And so he didn't break the rules. And you could say, well, it's an angle shoot, but there's also a risk if he is now, you know, if you're playing him in future and he's regularly angle shooting like this, and he min 3-bets you, you're going to be a little bit more cautious, I think, you know. And so
behaving in poor faith under the guise of not rule breaking goes against the honor code, Tom.
But here's what I'll say. Well, let me just kind of jump in here for a second. Let's say if this guy, this question I guess is towards you, Scott. Let's say if this guy had Jack 7 offsuit here, and he had raised, and he announced, and he didn't announce raise, but he said 360.
Yes, sir.
Then it's like, would you agree that this is a guaranteed non-angle shoot?
Firstly, before I nail my colours to the mast with such passion, I do want to state I real life a little bit indifferent here. I really just don't know. But in terms of the argument for,
Damn, Tom's already convinced you, man. Like you gotta hold your ground, Scott. You gotta step
I'm
up.
Use that
holding my
debating
ground.
skill, Wubbs.
Listen, Tom's a little punk, a little Brady violation there, by the way, withholding exculpatory evidence. I didn't know about your Googling and Twittering, by the way. I came in here fresh and watched it here with unfettered eyes. Look, if he had Jack 7 off, it would be a different matter altogether because he has junk. But in this situation, he didn't have Jack 7 off yet.
But
Can I
is
say
it-
something?
well,
Can I say
Michael-
something towards that, by the way?
My question was, I'll let you in a second, Tom, but my question was, Scott, that wasn't my question. My question was, if he had Jack 7 off, would it be a guaranteed non-angle shoot?
I wouldn't say it was a guarantee, but I would say highly likely because the whole essence of the angle shoot here is that he wants exactly what happened to take place. He wants the guy under the gun to believe he's erroneously min 3-bet so that he's 4-bet shoves wider, right? So the whole idea here is that he has ace king suited. He knows that the guy's opened under the gun. He knows if he min 3-bets that he's going to look really weak and hapless, and that he might get the guy to 4-bet rip with a hand just like he had. Now, I appreciate that is quite a lot of thought process in a short amount of time, but this guy's at a final table of an EPT, and I'm going to give him credit for that. So debating whether or not with another hypothetical hand like Jack 7 offsuit is a moot point. The fact is he had ace king suited, and that is the one occasion that he did pull this maneuver. So I don't think you can argue, yeah, but what if it was a different hand? Because it wasn't a different hand. The idea is he knew he had this hand, he knew what had taken place, and he had some idea.
So I have a pushback, a little quick query about that, because I think, let's imagine he had his range, blind blind, right? And let's say he has that Jack 7 off, right? Bottom of, I don't know exactly what the stacks were or the VP, but let's say Jack 7 off, right? And then the guy 4-bet jams, Queen Jack, and then the guy's like, oh shit, I didn't see it. Okay, I fold. We're not debating that. It never makes it past the filter of reaching our attention. It's like whatever. So the fact that he turns up with ace king is like, oh my god, is it an angle shoot? And now we're questioning it. But it could be a 10-to-1 chance that like he actually had the hand that happened. And so by the very fact that we're seeing it, there's an essence of confirmation bias where we have to at least have that as part of our thinking, because we're naturally not going to see the times where someone in that situation would make the mistake and raise with a hand that was folding, which is what the guy obviously was trying to take advantage of.
Objection.
Go on.
Your hypotheticals don't really work because this is what actually happened. And if he was angle shooting, which I believe that he was, we wouldn't have seen the situation play out with Jack 7 offsuit because he would have just mucked it.
Right, but that's my point. So what we're doing right here is we're trying to, let's say, judge the percentage of which he's angle shooting. And one of the things that you would say, he's angle shooting because he turns it with ace king. And it's a bit like saying someone's really lucky, or let's say someone's really skillful because they won a tournament. And like, yes, that's true, but that's more of a kind of confirmation bias that like after someone wins a tournament, you go, they're really good at poker. But if they lose a tournament, they would still be the same skill, etc., etc. Ergo, the fact that we're seeing this guy, I think, reduces the frequency, because we have to acknowledge that there will be lots of times we would have seen something similar that just never makes it to the screen. So therefore, our chimp brains are not very good at processing that kind of confirmation bias, right? The sort of success bias that could be at play here, where we're only going to see the contentious decision by the very nature of the fact that like it's a contentious decision, and there could have been 5 similar things that happen in global poker that never got to our attention.
Scott, he's got you nodding already. This is already something. He's got you like, yeah, that makes sense. I got a question from Mr. Guns here, Mr. Tommy Guns. Yeah. If this happened, and this specific player that was accused of the angle shoot with the ace king suited, if he was on the button or the cutoff or the hijack, does this change everything? And do you now say like this is definitely an angle shoot now?
How would that situation play out?
So it would be, the guy with the queen jack suited opens 270, and then now instead of being in the small blind where he would 3x and go to 360, now he's on the button or the cutoff or the hijack and he says 360. Now is it like,
Oh, well, I mean, if you use a non-standard sizing, that would be very strange. There was another, for example, like Daniel Negreanu, I think, did once in the World Series or something where he made a raise with, I think ace king maybe as well, actually, if I remember rightly. And he went oopsie, and he like pretended to use the wrong chips, right? So he meant to raise it with I'm going to get this wrong, but Pedro can maybe find the clip where he tries to raise with like 2 500 chips and actually accidentally throws in 2 5,000 chips. And he goes, oopsie, I can't really see it. And he really draws attention to the fact that like, oh, that was a mistake.
Negreanu raises. And raises big.
I think when you look at the response when this guy makes a mistake, he sits there quite quietly and he drinks a little bit of water. And to me, that makes it seem less likely that he's sort of trying to say, oh, sorry, you know what I mean? Like, at no point does he go, like, oh, I'm really weak, you know what I mean? Like, to me, that suggests a little bit of innocence in that aspect, because I was trying to think, like, how would I react in that situation, right? That I've made a mistake. I would feel very guilty straight away, and I would apologize straight away once the action's hands over. But to be honest, I'd just be quiet and go like, oh, I don't want to draw attention to this. Like, I kind of will be a weird spot post flop if the guy calls, etc., etc. And that's another little thing to mention as well. You're going to make, like, how awkward is it going to be if the guy calls? Like, he's no guarantee that this guy's just naturally going to jam, right? There's a lot of hands that are going to flatten the undergun spot. And now you're playing ace king suited out of position with this weird SPR, with this weird dynamic, with this completely understudied spot. So to angle shoot with ace king suited with a min 3-bet, like, it's possible, of course. And like, you found it looks bad because the guy 4-bet ripped queen jack suited. But there's definitely a chance. Like, he had no idea that the guy's going to 4-bet rip, and there's a good chance that the guy flats a lot. I think a lot of opponents would maybe flatten that spot, being a bit suspicious. And now the board comes 10 high, and you're like, "Well, I'm going to c-bet or something." And so, like, I don't know, maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean that's a good point because if the guy had aces or kings, it's kind of a different ballgame.
Yeah,
Because then if he like min 3-bets on accident or whatever, and he gets flatted, that's totally fine. And with ace king suited, you kind of risk that I'm going to do this min 3-bet, and then this guy's going to call me with maybe a hand like queen jack suited or jack 10 suited or 9-8 suited or whatever, and I'm out of position. I might get outflopped and stuff. So is ace king suited really the hand you want to do this with, Scott? Is this and also like Tom was mentioning, there's no guarantee of a shove coming. And I want to touch on the shove afterwards too. Like, do we think the shove is unethical if we think the guy misclicked and now we're taking advantage of the misclick? I do want to get into that, but Scott, it looks like you had some thoughts.
Couple of points. Firstly, our cats are almost symmetrical right now, which is something to behold.
it's a horse. Oh, sorry.
That is a horse. Certainly a horse. Secondly, my
Sorry,
cats.
Constantine.
Your cat's rubbish. It's not rubbish. I didn't mean that. They're both naked though, Jack. You love it.
They are naked cats.
Okay, back to the point at hand. See what I did there? So you guys are just talking nonsense for the most part. It's a shame. All right, and I'm here to set you
Tell us
straight.
why, Scott. Why are we talking nonsense? Give us
Well-
a strong reason, like a firm one though, to make us nod our heads. Oh yeah, Scott, you got a point there. Let's see it.
Well, I've got a bloody point, mate. Right, and my point is as follows. Let me just construct it. No, okay. So firstly, Jack, you said, is that really the hand he wants to use here? And I think that's not the optimal way to think about this spot because it's the hand that he has here, right? So I don't think he's coming in here with an angle shooting strategy thinking aces and kings will be my angle hands, right? And I'll balance my angling range with jack 7 off. I think what is far more likely is he has this hand here and under the gun opens, okay? And this guy is we already know that there's potential for this guy to be a gifted angle shooter, all right? Someone at the table, your cat looks so cute right now. Someone at the table suggested he had previous, although Tom is refuting that somewhat. He knows that under the gun, when they open, has a pretty strong range, right? He looks at the stack sizes. He knows the ICM in this situation. He has reads on the player. He knows that the guy who's opening under the gun is opening a very narrow and strong range, right? Queen Jack suited is close to the bottom of the under the gun range, right? 10-9 suited, Jack 10 suited, be the other ones. So he knows that the guy is opening a tight and strong range, but he still has that range mostly dominated. He knows that if he can make it appear as though he is misclicked, as though he is just trying to 3x blind v blind with that wide range, as was suggested in the commentary, he knows that hands like Queen Jack suit will probably 4-bet jam most of the time because they've got masses of fold equity. Now, they play well post-flop and he'll be in position, but the fold equity is incredibly valuable in that spot, especially if you think that you're up against a guy who has made a misclick, right? The 4-bet jam is going to look very strong, as was the opening range, and small blind has no choice but to way overfold. So if you think about if you took your normal small blind 3-bet non-all in range and compared it to the 3-betting range that is accidentally a 3x open, you'll see that the normal 3-betting range is going to be ultra narrow and the 3x open is pretty wide. So in theory, under the gun has way more fold equity than he otherwise should. He's basically 3-betting against a really wide small versus big blind range, which means the small blind is absolutely screwed, right? So it's an absolute print spot for the under the gun. And if the small blind is aware of that, about how the spot appears, and he has ace king suited, he knows he's going to get 4-bet jammed on a really healthy amount of the time. The other thing to add here, I would be more inclined to agree with you guys if you had ace king offsuit, because obviously that's a lot more difficult to play post flop. But with ace king suited, which plays really well post flop and dominates a lot of the defending range because so much of the opening range under the gun is suited, I think that he's safe, that he can play his little angle here. So
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I kind of agree with. I think if we see Ace King off in that spot, I think we're all sitting there being like, this is probably a misclick. And I think it's funny enough that Ace King suited is probably one of the hands that like with aces, I'm a little bit more suspicious as well because I'm like, well, it's just he has such or kings, he's such an easy decision, right? And Ace King suited is in that I'm not sure territory. If he's doing it with jacks or Ace King suited, I'm like, it's that I don't know. If he does it with eights, I'm like, oh, this is a misclick, you know. But with Ace King suited, even if he did like Ace Jack suited, I'd be like, probably not a misclick, probably a misclick. Sorry. So Ace King suited is in that I don't know territory, right? And it could be. The one thing I would say is like he has to have pre-planned this a little bit for the speed of which he acts, right? Because part of the challenge is I have to raise blind v blind and make it look like I haven't noticed, and was successful in that, by the way, because the guy 4-bet jammed, right? And he's not 4-bet jamming if he thinks he's being misled. So he has to have already made that decision. Like, and so the question I think is, has he seen the raise? Now, maybe he hasn't seen the raise. We don't know. Has he seen the raise, etc., etc.? But if he hasn't seen the raise, he has to already be thinking, okay, if I get a hand, I'm going to now 3x, etc., etc. But it's such a tiny range that you want to even do that with. Like Ace King suited, kings and aces. I mean, that's kind of what we agree on, Mubs, right? There's no other hands, right? His range for misclick opening is 3 hands, and the rest of his range is going to be like, okay, you know. And I think the speed of which he does this all makes me lean towards innocence, because that's a lot of computational stuff you've got to figure out, as well as you've got to know the stack depths, etc., etc. By the way, it's not like the big blind's still in the pot as well. I mean, that's the important factor too, right? It's like the big blind can wake up with a hand and like creates a whole other dynamic. And again, I think with aces kings, you just don't care. It's like very happy to do that. What if big blind does some weird 4-bet? Like, I mean, it's not a problem with ace king suited. There's lots of little permutations there that are, I think, very explainable if it's a misclick, and that if it is all a pre-planned mastermind, a lot of things have to go right. I mean, they all went right, and they could go right with logic, but like, it's a lot to have preloaded, and then to have it all preloaded with only 3 hands for the program to run is quite a lot, I would say, given that 98%, 99%, 98% of the time, I don't know exactly know what is aces, kings, and ace king suited as a range. Given 99% of the time this program is pointless, the mental energy required to basically make a 1% plan feels a lot to do at a final table when you've got enough to be thinking about anyway.
And I've got a couple things to say on this too. Like firstly, this play only works in the small blind, right? Because of the size, he goes 360, right? He can't credibly do this from the button, cut off, hijack, or anywhere else, even the big blind, without it being a clear angle shoot, because that's not a standard raise size, right? It's only standard.
He would call in that case, right? He goes, oh, min raising. He goes, oh no, it's a call. He goes, oh, okay, sorry, because he doesn't even raise enough, right?
So there's that. That's one thing, right? Because he goes 360. He can't do that from anywhere else besides a small blind. So this guy has to be like a seasoned angle shooter for this to be an angle shoot for sure. He has to be like a seasoned veteran. Like he's like waiting for this spot in the small blind and just like, I know what I'm gonna do. But there's also a couple other things, right? Like when he says 360 and he puts his chips in, the floor can come in and rule that as a call. That's a very big risk, I think, to take with ace king suited there. Like the floor can come in and be like, you didn't announce raise. 360 is not enough to raise. This can be a call. I asked GPT, by the way. I said, what's the standard kind of thing here? And I put in the spot, and it said like the standard ruling is a call here. This is supposed to be a call.
Didn't they say it was the first time that he had announced raised?
That's what I was going to bring up next. Here's a big thing against Tom's argument here. This is the first time at the featured table that he had announced 360. He didn't announce raise, Scott. He announced 360. He didn't say raise, but every other time apparently he was, we didn't see it because we didn't see it in the video clip, but every other time he would just put in the chips and not say anything. Now all of a sudden he says 360. So that kind of makes it seem like an angle shoot. But if it's an angle shoot, like Tom was saying, this is such a specific situation where it's like you can only do it with like ace king, aces, kings, queens, and only in the small blind. So you have to be like a seasoned angle shooter to pull this off. And here's another problem. He knows this is being broadcast on a stream. So risking an angle shoot like on a stream like that is kind of, it's one of those situations where like people will angle shoot like maybe on the down low, but on a stream it's like, would he really do that?
public audience will ever have, right?
It's kind of risky to kind of do that and then also have no guarantee of the result, because you could say 360 floor comes in, you didn't announce raise, it's not enough chips going in, this is a call, and then he can't say anything about it. He's gonna be like, all right, like what else am I gonna do, right?
Big
Like,
blind completes now. Your three-way out position racing.
and then you're in big trouble, right? So this is kind of a risky play. So it kind of makes me actually now putting down the shields of one of us thinks it's not an angle shoot, one of us thinks it is an angle shoot. In terms of the game that we were playing, let's talk about like how we actually feel about the spot. And my conclusion, I think, is like before this call, actually, I was kind of leaning towards it is an angle shoot. But the more I kind of, the three of us were talking here, I feel like it's probably not, even though it seems weird in that like he didn't announce anything else. Maybe it's just like
It's inspired my
because he was in the small blind,
absolute-
he felt the need to say 360 because it's different than other raise sizings that he typically uses at the table, which would be like 2x or 2.2x or whatever. And but for me, I'm also thinking like if I made a mistake, I immediately react to it. And he didn't do that, which is kind of weird. I thought, I know Tom used it as the opposite end of the argument, but for me, it's kind of like it makes it seem like an angle shoot that he didn't like, because I've misclicked in live poker a couple of times myself where I didn't see a raise and I raise. I'm like, okay, I put in the chips like to raise or whatever, and they're like, oh no, yeah, there was a raise already. I'm like, oh, damn it. Okay, like I immediately react to it. Immediately. Like it's not even like I can't control that reaction. It's like, oh, I didn't see. Okay, all right. And then like I'm forced to call in that situation, like when that's happened. And so it's very feasible that he didn't see the action. Like that's a very normal thing. Like I've seen other people doing that. I've done that myself. Where it's just like you play so much poker, you're playing poker for like 9, 10, 11, 12 hours. At a certain point, your brain's like, I just like maybe you're having a conversation with somebody. Like obviously he probably wasn't in this case. He was on a live stream, but
cup of tea,
you maybe just didn't see it, right? Like he was drinking his water or sipping his tea or whatever, and he just actually didn't see it, right? It's hard to stay switched on for so many hours at a time. So I'm personally gonna say my actual opinion. I think he wasn't angle shooting, but I couldn't tell you that very firmly. That's my actual opinion. What do you guys got? What's your actual opinion? Is it close to what you guys were arguing? Like,
when I first saw it, I thought, "Oh, this is bad." And when I watched the commentary, by the way, I don't think we said like what a fantastic. I thought Star's commentary team did a really good job. So bravo to James Hartigan and Joe Stapes. I thought were like fantastic in terms of how they dealt with that, because that's an awkward thing to deal with, especially when there's a guy being like, "Oh, he's guilty." And then I think James made the comment. He was like, "Oh, we got a guy to really get something." It's like it's an awkward spot, and they handled it well.
The other guy was a bit too quick to convict, I thought.
Possibly, but funny enough, I would have been in the same boat of like, oh, that's really dodgy. Like the first time I see it, but the more that I thought about it, the more I'm like, I just don't see it. Like especially when you think about that, there's so many uncertainties to roll through. It's such it worked out perfectly, so it looks like he planned it all. But I think that was just more the variance that kind of like made it work out perfectly. As you say, like it could have got ruled as a call, and then again, we never see it, which is like, oh, it's a weird spot. They're playing three-way now, out position or something. It would be such a mental load to have to exactly in this one instance have a range that is ready to angle shoot that is preset. Because like there'll be loads of spots where like you can't do it because the guy's got 10 people or whatever, 15 big blinds or something, or whatever, right? Like some random stack depths are playing the part where you've got to think about it differently. Or the big blind shallow or something, I mean, like there's lots of things where you can't quite risk it. So like the fact that stacks are all aligned perfectly again is like, I don't know if I like to think about a lot of things when I play poker. I don't think I would have the emotional or energy required to be able to also keep in mind angle shooting spots, which are 97 or 98% of the time not feasible. Like that, just imagine every time you're there, you're like, oh, this will be a great spot. Oh, I got 7-4 off. Okay, I fold. Like, the immense just burnout you would experience playing poker then,
Okay, we got two soft no's. What do you got, Scott?
Yeah, I despite my protestations, I was a hard no before.
A hard no. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I was.
A hard no, like for me, that means like there's a 0% chance he was angle shooting.
No, not that.
Okay.
What's your number, Webs?
All right, I'd say maybe like 80% that he didn't do it right. Now,
Okay.
in terms of, convicting him in the court of public opinion, it's like, if this was beyond reasonable doubt, like a criminal case, you wouldn't stand a chance. If it was balance of probability, 51%, I think you might sneak it, right? Because in terms of the court of public opinion, I think that people are biased to want to find people guilty because it is more salacious. It's more exciting, isn't it, to believe that somebody did do this? It really reminds me of the whole Robbie Jade Lou situation, right? It felt like people really wanted it to be a cheating scandal because it would be so sensational if it was. And even that one, I think, like I really do believe was just a recreational player getting themselves in a tangle and making a huge fumbling mistake.
That one I would strongly disagree with, but that's for a whole other.
That was my.
We'll do that. We'll do that next week.
In
That's
terms
a
of
whole nother ball game you're opening up there. But yeah, that's a very strong disagreement. Yeah.
in this situation, though, there's the thing that makes me believe that he didn't do it with quite a bit of confidence, aside from the fact that he would have to be really switched on. I do think he would have had to have a preordained strategy where he's like, if the under the gun opens, I will min three bet. I think he had to plan it before. It did all happen really rather quickly. But what really leads me to believe that it was a mistake is the fact that he is so indifferent about the whole situation. Now, I know that this could go either way. He's indifferent because he knew what he was doing, would be the argument of a lot of people. But I would counter that because when he wins the hand, if you watch him, he does not give a shit, right? He really doesn't seem to. There's no flicker of emotion about the guy. When the run out is coming, he is just totally stoic, just sort of staring into space. And as you guys pointed out, sipping his cup of tea, right? You know, when you watch a film and the bad guy is plotting something evil or he's just done something terrible, they always make them eat or drink because if you are feeling guilty or frightened, if your parasympathetic nervous system is engaged, right, you couldn't possibly eat or drink. You know, when you're really nervous or anxious and you can't eat, right? So they always make bad guys look more psychopathic by eating or drinking. It's like, look how casual I am. I don't give a shit. Like I'm laid back. He has that air about him, about the whole hand. When he makes them in three bet, when they're ruling on it, he's sipping his tea, he doesn't care. They make the ruling, the hand runs out, he wins a huge part at the final table of the EPT, and he looks like he's watching daytime TV, right? He could be anywhere doing anything. So my belief is someone who is that nonchalant and casual about that whole scenario there, and he's unapologetic as well, by the way, right? I think it's less likely he's going to be apologetic. I think it's less likely he's going to be apologetic if he made a mistake than if he was angling. Because if he was angling, he would want to see more. It'd be like, oh, thou doth protest too much. He doesn't want people to think that he doesn't really care about it. If he doesn't care about it, I do believe people think, well, he must have done it on purpose. So his indifference to the whole situation, the fact that he's not bothered, leads me to believe he's just not paying attention, right? He's just not dialed in. If I was at that situation, that final table, I would be watching everything, right? Because I would be under an enormous amount of tension, counting the stacks, looking at people's stacks. Before I acted, I would be looking at other people, trying to work out the ICM, right? I'd be so invested. When the run out was coming, I'd be watching like a hawk. Whereas he is blasé about the whole thing. And someone who's completely blasé about that is much more likely to make a mistake. The last thing I'll say is he is Russian, right? And I know that he announces the raise in that one situation. Tom, your little jibe at the start here. So English isn't his first language, which increases the likelihood that when somebody says raise, that he doesn't register it, right? We're more sensitive to the, our first language, to the words that we hear, right? Whereas he might just not be paying attention. He's thinking to himself and he's not hearing, he's just like filtering out the background noise, which isn't even in his first language. So I think that increases the probability that he didn't hear what had happened before. So for all those reasons, I was disappointed that I didn't draw the moose at the start here, because I think the argument against is way more powerful than the argument for, It's just
That's fair. That's fair. I want to touch on just one last thing before we close out this podcast here, or this show, I should call it. This is kind of a show. The jam, the rejam. Queen Jack suited. Just very quickly, do you guys think there's even a slither of unethicalness for rejamming if we think this guy misclicked? And also, would you have jammed, factoring in, because you got to factor in, let's just say like maybe this is like a 75% chance of a misclick and a 25% chance of an angle shoot. You kind of have to factor that into your mind before you decide if you want to call or jam there. So very quickly, we can start with Scott. Do you think there's even a slither of unethicalness in jamming? And then would you have jammed this spot or would you have flatted? Those are the only two options. Obviously, we're not folding, or maybe we are folding. I don't know. Like, what would you do? How would you play this spot? And do you think there's any slither of unethical? Just try to make it short and compact.
Before I pass to Tom afterwards, you're muted, by the way, Tom, and I don't think you realise. Secondly, I don't think it's unethical because an angle shoot is a deliberate attempt to mislead someone, which is considered in poor faith, right? For basketball, Jack, it would be flopping. In football, it's diving. It's against the rules in football, right? Most of the time you get away with it, but it is considered highly unethical and ungentlemanly conduct, right? So I think that it's perfectly fine to punish someone for a mistake, but not to try and deceive them within the fairness of the game. So someone makes an error, it's on you to exploit that. It's no different from someone making an error in strategy. If someone makes a really bad bet or picks the wrong sizing on a certain board texture, you are perfectly within your rights to take advantage of that. And as the guy on the commentary said, you shouldn't have to play defensively now just because the guy might have made a misclick, right? He shouldn't have to just call there. If he thinks that the higher EV play is to jam, he should not have to take a lower EV play because of the lack of due care and attention from another player. So the answer for me is absolutely no way was the other guy guilty of anything. Would I have jammed? I honestly cannot tell you. We didn't get the full picture. If I'd have been able to see the guy when this happened, I'd feel much more confident one way or another. But from an ethical standpoint, would I have jammed if I believed that he was opening blind v blind? Absolutely, yes, I would. And that's just how it has to be,
But
right?
you can't 100% believe he was opening blind or blind, right? There's like percentage chances. Like
No, but
this could be an open, this could be kind of an angle. You got to kind of weigh the pros and cons there, and then
Well,
kind of
yeah.
make your decision from there. Like, am I jamming? Am I calling? Or am I just folding? Because I think this is aces and kings.
I think the
I mean,
interesting thing for
he had the
me,
info he had, right? And he obviously looked at the guy and thought, I believe more that this is a 3x than I believe it's an angle. And so he took the highest EV play. And for me, I think he made the correct play. And I think he was
Okay.
very
Sure.
unfortunate.
yeah. So for me, like let's take a kind of, let's assume it's never a misclick in terms of our calculations, and like it's just a 3x blind v blind range, blind v blind raise. You're just jamming your entire range there as the under the gun player. Like you should not have a hand that should flat there. Like it's so maybe actually weirdly you should probably flat aces or something. I don't know actually what you do with aces if you think that it's kind of, you could maybe play around a little bit with that, funny enough. But if you got basically any hand that you know is middle, bottom of your range, whatever, like it's just so plus EV. It's a bit like you know you're up against a 8BB or something with ICM pressure, like you just jam any two cards, like it would be plus EV. The question I think becomes interesting, like I don't know what percent, even after the debate, I don't know what percentage I would give. 10%, 5%, 20%, whatever, 2%. And I think there is a percentage where like you start getting a little bit kind of cautious about it, right? So let's say you were like, well, I'm pretty sure this is an angle shoot, but I'm only 75% confident. Now, if you're 75% confident, you kind of like, well, I'll get a really plus EV spot 75% of the time, and 25% of the time I'm going to run into the nuts. Like I'm not expecting my queen jack suited to be up against tens here, right? It's like it's actually not the best hand for 4-bet jamming, depending on how let's say where you draw the line in terms of the angle shoot to angle shoot ratio. So I think there is some, and it also would be really interesting is like how you're going to play the spot post flop as well, because you have quite good clarity in terms of, you know, it's just if you want to play that game, it's either an angle shoot or it's a small one versus big blind 3x raise, and that gives you quite a lot of range clarity in some of the post flop decision making. I don't think the person who clicked raise has a great idea of like where you are going to be in your range. Like I'm trying to think of myself in the small blind situation. I've min 3-bet by accident and the guy's called and I'm like, what do I do? Like what boards do I see bet on? What on earth am I going to do? And I'm out of position, and so I think you would have possibly have a potential to over realize EV2. It's a very weird spot. So like I think that would be I would like to play that spot just from a kind of like poker curiosity point of view, to get in these weird spots where like no one knows what they're doing. I think they're quite fun. But in terms of like, is it plus EV to jam? 100%. Is it ethical to jam? 100%.
Wait, so are you calling or jamming?
I would call because I like to. Well, no, I would actually jam in game. But
Okay.
if the more I'm suspicious, the more I'd call and then see what happens post flop, which would be
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, I would probably lean towards a call personally, just because I think there's a higher chance of an angle shoot than you guys probably do. Like my no is a little more of a soft no. It's more like I would say like maybe 30 or 40% angle shoot, and then like 50 or 60% that, or 60 or 70% that it's maybe just he actually just didn't see the action and all these weird things happen. So I lean towards a little bit more of an angle shoot, and so I would have just called personally, but like I don't feel extremely strongly about it or anything. But yeah, I mean that's what it is. And the final thing I will say, like I'd love to see the floor come in there and kind of like, especially it being like a final table, not a live. It doesn't matter if it's live or not. It's a final table. There's a lot of money on the line, right? So when the floor comes in, I would love to see them kind of ask the dealer, the player, the other player, like what was the intention here? Are you trying to raise small blind versus big blind? Okay, now the guy confirms he's trying to raise small blind versus big blind, right? Whether he's angle shooting or not, that's what he's gonna say. Like he's like, I didn't see the raise. I was trying to raise small blind versus big blind. Okay, now I would say like, okay, this guy raised. You can call or raise. Which one are you doing? You know, ask him right there. What is your intention? Are you calling or are you raising? There's 360 is not an amount that you can put in here. Either that's going to be said, or in my opinion, it should just be treated as a call to avoid any kind of BS that comes out otherwise. Like it's either going to be a call, in my opinion, or we're going to go on intention. So the player has to be asked and the dealer has to be asked, like, what are the intentions here? Was this supposed to be a call or raise? And they have to ask him, like, okay, do you want to call or raise? Like, which one would you guys prefer? Like, would you want the floor to come in and be like, no, this is not a big enough raise. You didn't say raise. This is not a big enough amount to be considered a raise, so this is a call. Or would you rather the floor come in and say, you put in too many chips, this is not a call or a raise. This is one of those weird in-betweeners. Which one do you want to do? Now you know, okay, look, he raised. Are you calling or are you raising? You can't fold anymore. You put chips in. Are you calling or are you raising? Or would you rather the floor come with a definitive kind of call or a definitive raise, which is actually what they did? Which one of those three options, like, would you prefer? If you're in a poker game, yeah.
So if I was at a home game or something, I think I would suggest, if I was playing with my buddies who were not very experienced at poker and the guy missed the action, I would suggest, okay, take back your bet. It's been a raise. What do you want to do now? Like, start again. I don't think you can do that in a professional.
No. We're talking about
obviously.
like an actual casino where you can't.
If I was a tournament director there, I would have ruled it the same. I would have I think there's a threshold where it's like if it's below, obviously it's below a min raise, right? But it's like if it's closer to a call than a raise, you can rule it as a call. If it's closer to the raise than a call, you rule it as a raise. I don't think you could ask for intention or something, but his intent is to raise the big blind.
Right.
He didn't. You could say, well, you intended a 3-bet, but like that gets a little tricky to navigate in terms of the kind of offering. I think I would have done the same as the tournament director.
Okay.
I don't think there's any blame associated there. Yeah.
Scott, what do you got?
I mean, in all the live cash games I've played, whenever I misclick, which is really bloody often, which also increases the possibility, by the way, I think, of other people doing it, just because I've noticed how hard it is in live poker to get that kind of stuff right. I'm a misclick king, and I was saying before, I did get not accused, but I did get a very intensive stare throughout a hand, and then I got quizzed afterwards by.
Was that Tony Angle shot?
Yeah. Shame, yeah. It's my signature play, isn't it? Yeah, no, I thought I was opening, and the guy had already opened, and I ended up min 3-betting, and the same sort of thing happened. And then afterwards, he was like staring at me the whole hand, and I was just like, just really want the ground swallow him up. And afterwards, did you do that on purpose? I was like, mate, I don't handle these things often. Like, they don't have these online.
Did you, was it a misclick when you triple barreled into my set that time?
Yes, I thought it was against Tommy Guns. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
What do you want the director to do, Scott? What are we looking at?
Just in all the games I played, if you don't announce raise, specifically raise, doesn't matter what size you put out. In my experience, they just say, no, it's a call. You have to announce it, right? Or it has to be an amount bigger than the min raise, right? So anything under a min raise, in my experience, is treated as a call unless you say otherwise. So someone opens, in a 1-2 game, someone opens to 8, and I go, what would the min raise be in that spot? It'd be someone opens to 8, I go 9, right? I just say 9 without saying raise. They're going to say, no, that's a call. You didn't say raise,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know why that didn't happen here. Like, I don't know what the threshold is, Jack. You know, you said about like, oh, if it's closer to a raise, then it should be a raise. If it's closer to a call, it should be a
I
call.
don't know about that. Like I like for me, I want to ask the person right then and there. Do you want to raise or do you want to call? If he says raise, then you know he's probably got like a
Yeah.
range that wants to three bet. If he says call, then maybe he actually did kind of misclick and now he doesn't want to put more money in. Like, yeah, I mean, for me, I'd much prefer the tournament director to come in and be like, hey, you said 360. We've got at least a call here. Now we're giving you the option. This guy raised 270. Are you going to raise or are you going to call? And then he just has to decide right there. Are you raising or calling? There's only
But
two
you
options.
but you see why you can't do that is because if he's clever, he could go, actually, I'll just say call and he'll rejam.
He can rejam.
I'll call, and then the meta of the hand is different. So I think if you give
It's
the guy-
different, but then he's screwed himself with ace king suited, right? If he says raise, then that guy can be like, ooh, this really could be an angle shoot here, right? He just went 360, and then now the tournament director is like, do you want to raise or call? And the guy's like,
now
I
he's
want to
fake
raise.
angle shooting with bluffs.
yeah, but then he
Now
can-
you could level that too, but like that's like another level, right? Like, but yeah, like it would probably be nice if there was some standardized approach. Like if it's below a certain threshold and it's guaranteed to call, no questions asked. If it's above a certain threshold, it's guaranteed to raise.
I mean,
That probably makes sense.
it seems easy, right? If it's not enough for a min three bet and there was no verbal declaration of raise, it's a call. It's just such an easy ruling to have. And
Right.
it takes away the further, because if you ask him the question, what did you actually want to do? You're actually rewarding him for making a mistake, which I don't think is fair, and it's unfair on the other dude. So I think
Did you
you've made a mistake. We're going to make a ruling. This is the ruling, and I think it should be a call.
did you guys hear when I said I posted his Twitter post?
Yeah, I looked at it very long.
Okay.
What did he say? What was just briefly? What did he say?
No, you want me to summarize?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, I'll give the quick announcement from Shevliakov. And he talked about the earlier where he was accusing him that was different spot, but anyway. So next hand, the ace king suited hand. Jamil sitting on fire under the table, brought that to in the face. Finally had my tea. Enrico folded, Marius folded, Boris folded, looked at my cards, ace king suited, side open, looked at the timer. I usually avoid snap decision not to give time tells, grab chips, put them out, and that's the raise. I haven't reviewed the entire bit, but I believe I did this in other hands as well. Then the dealer told me Sizeman was wrong and put Jamel's raised. It was only at that moment I realized Jamel had raised. I hadn't seen or processed it. I didn't understand what the ruling would be, raise or call, but I immediately realized how bad this would look if I ruled a raise. I had no idea what to do, and frankly, none of the options made sense. Folding would look absurd and be plus EV. Suicide. Asking for a deal, redeal would be not allowed. Asking Jamil to fold to a 3-bet would be ridiculous. So I sat there, drank tea, waited for the situation to resolve. Jamil made a correct shove, but ran atop my range. Before revealing my hand, I said this wasn't angle shooting and apologised. Jamil busted, stood up, tried to apologise and shake hands. He refused. I understand from his side, etc., etc. He said, if I was trying to angle shoot in the ace king spot, the simpler and more effective way would have been to just say raise and put the chips out. Given
That's
everything
true.
that was happened leading up to that point and the stress I was under, it wasn't even obvious to me within 10 seconds whether 360 would be ruled a raise or a call, which to be fair, we were debating just now. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all fair. Let's wrap it up right there. We've kind of beat this dead horse, I don't even know if that's an expression. We can wrap it up right here, but let's ask the audience, for whoever made it this far into the video, let us know if you guys really like this format where we flip a coin, one person argues for, one person argues against. This is something we can do on a lot of different topics. Let us know if you prefer this format, and then at the end we kind of just share our actual thoughts, or if you prefer the format where it's just more conversational, and we're just kind of giving our actual thoughts right from the get. So let us know what you guys think. Take care. Good luck, everybody, and we'll see you guys in the next show. All right, we can wrap that up right there.